by the U.S. government, Department of Commerce. After that, they started to share. So they were allowing other Department of Commerces from about now 110, 115 countries were controlling the internet. And at some point they said, okay, this is going to be too much, we need to hand it off. And in 1998, they created ICANN to run the internet, but cleverly kept their council, which is the government agency committee, the GAC, which is the trade association, or rather the Department of Commerce, as well as other cross-balancing things. I mentioned that because I'll talk about it later. But anyway, ICANN then started down the path of saying, well, let's consider new top-level domains. So we have .com, we have .org, we have .biz. What else could happen? So they tested a few out. You've heard of .info, you've heard of .travel, perhaps, maybe not. You've heard of several others. After they had launched a few, they said, we can't do this anymore without a process in place. It was sort of like, I want to do .info. Okay, go for it. Got to be a little more precise than that. So they spent the last 6 years writing an application process, which is being approved in June. And so in June, what all our companies are going to be looking at is that all of a sudden the internet's going to go from .com, .biz, .org to another 600 different names. Some of them are generic and some of them are specific. So .ibm is an application, Deloitte & Touche is an application, Citibank is an application, .ibm is an application. Other things are community driven, .berlin, .sfo, .nyc, .gay, and other things are completely an investment. So somebody's launching .wine, somebody's doing .sport, somebody's doing .news, and these sorts of things. So the interesting challenge for all of our trademark attorneys in the future, and there's a big future for trademark attorneys, is that they're going to have to consider, how is my company being represented in the internet now? So, in addition to country codes and everything else, there are now actually going to be specific codes. And the reason why this is really important, and I spend a little time talking about this first, and then I'll talk about .gay second, is that it's really the rebirth of the internet. It's not going to be the same anymore. Right now, one of the best examples is from a safety standpoint on the internet. If I was .Red Cross and people were making donations to anything that says .Red Cross, they know it's going to the Red Cross, versus right now, there are tons of sites out there that are fishing for people to give money to Japan and the crisis in Japan. And many, 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 many people are being taken advantage of because they don't have the security of really knowing that it's that it's the Red Cross that they're giving money to. The other side of where that's going to change things is on information. So, because it's near and dear to my heart, we can talk about .gay, and so all of a sudden now you're typing in and you're looking to find if a company is gay friendly. Well, if I type in IBM.gay and I get my IBM splash page and I see my HRC rating on that splash page, you're pretty well done. You know where they stand on a lot of things. But it's also, if you type in bar.gay, or you type in lawyer.gay, or you type in whatever.gay, you're now literally going to a whole new world that's very focused on the gay and lesbian community. So versus going to a site that may have been set up by an ex-gay organization that looks like it's a gay site, you're now going to a safe place in the gay and lesbian community. And when I realized this from this phone call from this gentleman from who's a domain grabber is actually what they call them. But these are we're going to now to a higher level of domain grabbing, because now it's like the whole domain. It's not a name in a domain, it's like the whole enchilada. So anyway, brilliant man, very helpful, knew that this needed to be in the community. And so we were very thankful that we understood, of the many, many phone calls that he made, we understood what this was as an opportunity. And as a marketing company, we also saw the need, because the gay and lesbian communications globally are erratic at best. The publications are changing, the online components are changing, social media is changing, everything's changing about every 6 to 9 months. It's not changing every 3 years or 4 years or 5 years. It's happening much, much faster. And this becomes, you know, a global space for the community that allows a lot of really good things, both as a marketer who's looking to track and show the investment in the dollars available in the gay community, but also as a huge homosexual who really wanted to do something a little bit different and wanted to challenge corporations and wanted to give back to the community and wanted to take an experience of losing a lot of friends with HIV and AIDS and not having the internet for information back then to a new place where what happens if we can network all the gay and lesbian community centers, and we can network HIV.gay, and we can network Center.gay and Lesbian.gay and Bisexual.gay and Questioning.gay and Student.gay. Lots of very, very positive networking can happen, and the reason why this whole change on the internet is going to change globally for us hugely is because this really is no less than providing gas, electric, and water to your house. It's going to become a pipeline to the whole community. So there's a lot of, if this was just sold to an internet investment company, which is always a risk, it would have not been, it wouldn't be developed for a benefit for the community, it'd just be sold as real estate in the community. So the opportunity we have is to make it something that can grow our businesses, that can grow our communities, that can grow our community services, and they can even start sort of putting some numbers and names around how many of us are where, because believe it or not, less than a year ago we got a phone call from somebody in Wisconsin saying, it's a great program, thank you for bringing it to us, but we don't have homosexuals in Wisconsin. And I just come back from the Gay Softball World Series where about 7,000 of them were hanging out in Milwaukee, so it seemed a little unusual. So anyway, it's a great opportunity. I'm looking forward to sharing more.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that, and thank you all for giving a little bit of an introduction. Given that we're a bank, and banks are always in some ways focused on metrics of some form, I want to, and also given that our short period of time to go into what's really interesting topics, I want to ask you guys about sort of entrance and exit points, particularly from the funding perspective. So maybe, Lee, given the fact that you're focused on with the social impact of this investing, how do you first of all source opportunities? What are your general criteria for something that would be of interest to you? And then once on board, what are the metrics you're looking at to determine whether or not it's been a successful investment?
Well, I mean, given that Galeforce Capital is pretty new, it'll be hard to give you metrics of performance, but I can tell you how it's going to work, and then I can tell you how we've done it at NESsT so far. Well, the way we source, typically there are three ways. The most successful is what I alluded to earlier, which are these social enterprise competitions. So within the countries where we operate and have ongoing operations, we do national social enterprise competitions every other year, in some cases every year. And that's where local organizations can apply with either a new idea or with an existing social enterprise that they're looking to get support to expand or improve. The other is referrals. So we get a lot of referrals, especially from foundations or other social investors that have an organization in their portfolio or a grantee that they've been working with and think that it would be a good fit or may have a social enterprise element. And then the last is our portfolio managers. We're a team of about 50 people, so they are proactively looking for opportunities in the markets. Now, the first time as Galeforce that we'll be doing this competition will be kicking off in June, which is a global competition, and that's going to be all online. So it's going to be, initially the first one will be in English. We'll be promoting it globally through a whole network of partners, and there'll be two tracks, one on innovation, which are new social enterprises, and one on impact, which are existing social enterprises. So that competition model has been the most successful in sourcing and building our pipeline. On the metrics side, I mean, we have all the sort of traditional metrics that you would find on the business side. In fact, for us, that's kind of the easiest part. So all of the social enterprises that enter our portfolio go through a rigorous business planning process with us. not a single one has ever come to us with a really polished business plan. So we often have to spend the first months with them really working on that much more earnestly and getting to know the internal workings of the business. And then that business plan becomes the baseline that we use going forward. And we set up 2 sets of metrics. Obviously the financial ones, which are very much based on the projections in the business plan. And we have a tool, our performance management tool, that we use to collect the data from them. And then the other, which is a bit more difficult, especially to aggregate, are the social impact indicators, because they're all very different businesses, and they also have very different social purpose. So, some of them are employment models, so there are metrics around, the employment creation that is generated as a result of the social enterprise, whereas others may be more policy-oriented human rights types of organizations, so they have a whole different set of social metrics. So the social metrics are very, very complicated. It's a very messy area. And so the whole concept of social return on investment, there are endless things going on now to try to find ways to aggregate those in some way. And there are a lot of really cool tools out there. But what we've found is that they're only applicable to certain segments within the market. So our metrics for a certain type of social enterprise are very different across the portfolio. Well, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, great. And now I'm going to turn it around and look at a little bit more of, given your background, Paul, taking a little bit more of a financial perspective on this. A similar question, since I'm sure many in our audience either have started or are interested in starting companies. What are the basic characteristics you look for in a potential investment? And whether or not you've already engaged metrics, do you have a sense of what those metrics would look like going forward?
Yeah, thanks. We look at our business on the private equity side, which I think is where we're talking here. We look at our business as if we are a private equity manager, but focused on a subsector, which is the LGBT consumer sector. There is some confusion around what we do. We are not looking at the management per se of a company. So it's not whether the management is LGBT. It is this business targeting and focused on the LGBT market, at least primarily focused on the LGBT market. And just to say, one of the things that has been very interesting to us is the propositions that we have had before us where the management are not LGBT and have simply said, we believe that this market will provide more growth than the mainstream market. So we look at that proposition. If it was somebody who was LGBT that happened to want funding for a business but is not in the LGBT consumer sector, that's something that we actually don't look at. In terms of sourcing investments, a lot of it is really just footwork, going around talking to companies. When we launched the company, we deliberately did some press coverage because we wanted to get people talking to us, and we have spoken to a lot of companies. But we're also ourselves active because very often the very good companies are not necessarily themselves looking, so we feel we have a duty to go and find the companies to invest in. In terms of choosing the companies, for us, being an LGBT business is not enough. We look at it as any fund manager will look at a business. We want a quality business plan. We want something that we believe will actually work and produce return to investors. And we also, and in particular, look at the quality of the management and their ability to deliver on that proposition. Just because of where we are currently, and we're trying to do a huge amount of stuff with not unlimited resource, we are also focusing at the moment on specific areas, and particularly those businesses that are subscale, but when combined with other businesses will actually be able to deliver returns, and also look at the cross-utilization of resource, as well as cross-selling, and also the ability, particularly on the social networking side, to drive advertising revenue. We have an advertising revenue model that we would apply to the companies we invest in. So from that perspective, it sounds like a traditional private equity manager, and that's what we do. We also screen everything that we do and say, is this a business that we feel comfortable being involved in? Is this a business that we believe will support the community and that will actually support the development of freedoms of liberal organisation. That's very important to us, but it is a byproduct of what we do. We are very much focused on return. We simply assess